Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Always good to see you. If I weren't doing well, seeing your face on the screen on a Wednesday morning improves how I'm doing.
Well, I appreciate that, and I concur the sentiments as well. So what's your spiritual energy number today?
I'm choosing to be a 10. I was dragging a little bit earlier today, but as you say, my good friend reminds me that it's really a choice that we make, and so what's out there can impact us in certain ways, but we always have a choice in terms of what our energy is going to be. So I'm choosing to be a 10.
Yeah, I appreciate you making that bringing that point up. Because what I found to be true is that when I tell folks it's a choice, how they respond to that determines to me a lot about their attitude toward themselves and
Mm-hmm.
how they see the world, their perspective. In other words, if they say, well, it's not really a choice, when they get into that kind of explanation, they don't see that it's a choice. Helps me understand that more likely, I'm not saying it's judgmentally, I'm just saying this is my goal is always to try to get to the quickest understanding about somebody as quickly as possible nowadays
Mm-hmm.
to prevent from bad relationships and things down the road that wisdom hopefully helps you navigate past nowadays. But anyway, my point is when they counter the statement of it's your choice, lets me know that that's a person usually playing the victim role. They have a victim mentality. Their fate is not, well, their life is not in their hands, so to speak, as much.
Right.
And so I'm glad you said it because that's more every day. I'm looking more into that for my own personal growth. Is clearly understanding that I can't control what happens in my life, but I definitely can control what happens or how I respond to those things that do happen in my life with negative energy, complaints, victimhood mentality, or I can respond with this is something interesting. What can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's happening right now too. So for me, it's I come up with those counter statements because it helps me in perspective. It's kind of like I use an analogy of there was this old football commercial and it had a Damian Thomason, I believe. He was they had the camera from the perspective of the running back looking at the back of his lineman, getting ready
Mm-hmm.
to run, getting ready to quarterback handle the ball. So we saw it from a Damian Thomason perspective. And he just right before he ran through the tackles, you can see how and they showed before he actually did it, he mentally saw every lane he was gonna run.
Yeah.
Then when the ball snapped, that's the path he took. So to me, it's like that. It's like when you take control of your life, when you have that understanding, you realize you can choose how to navigate those barriers that's going to come at you. They're going to come anyway because that's what life is. But how you navigate past those barriers is pretty much up to you. So I know it's a long introduction to my where I'm getting to. So like you, I'm a 10 as well. I choose to be a 10, and I'm grateful for that. And what's your gratitude moment this morning?
Yeah. So as always, I'm really grateful for um, living in a space. In my entire life, this has been true. Where I have indoor plumbing, I have water that's safe to drink. I have a refrigerator with ample, mostly fresh food in it, a roof over my head, heat in the winter, and rarely do I need it anymore. But even air conditioning in the summer, summer's been relatively cool where I live for a few years now. But just my basics are taken care of, and beyond the basics, I don't really need a lot. So I feel really grateful to have the basics, and then I read a lot. I have my own library. That's my main habit where I spend money on books, and I'm in relatively good health, mentally and physically, as far as I know. I mean, physically, I know I'm in relatively good health. Mentally, if I weren't, I probably wouldn't know that I weren't. Somebody would have to tell me. But I'm joking, but I'm dead serious. So I recognize my blessings, and I'm grateful for each breath um, that I'm blessed to take in and let go. So that's my gratitude.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I concur with you a lot there. I'm grateful for my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have a sound mind. I'm grateful for the 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life. I'm grateful for a mother who's still alive at the age of 87 and still has love and energy to give. And, you know, I'm grateful for the challenges and problems that are in my life because through those solutions and through those experiences, through those journeys, that's where growth happens. I'm grateful for, as you say, toilet water, running water. I'm grateful for just being able to be present and have a purpose. I'm grateful to be in line with my purpose and on a frequency with that. I'm
Mhm.
grateful to be able to have the opportunity to be here on this platform with you. Technology, everything had to line itself up right in order for it to make it happen. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that I'm grateful for it. Finally, I'm just grateful for the infinite possibilities that this day is going to provide. So, with that being said, Reggie, why don't you walk us through today's topic?
Yeah, so as we've been doing for over 2 years now, we're speaking in the context of my 2022 book, Healing America's Narratives, The Feminine, the Masculine, and Our Collective National Shadow, which takes a look at the history of the country from its conception and inception in the 1700s right up to today, um, through the lenses of history, developmental psychology, spirituality, culture, politics, and some other things. We've covered a lot of ground. And today we're going to take a specific look at, since we're in an election year and we're, ballpark figure a month and a half from election day, give or take 6 weeks or so, and take a close look at the partial truths, the misinformation, and the outright lies that is rampant in political discourse and campaign strategies. And rather than talking about it abstractly, we're gonna begin by talking about one particular race, which is not the presidential race, um, but it's the race for the United States congressional seat, the House of Representatives, for Connecticut's fifth congressional district, which is where I live. So I'm getting, I have them here. I scanned some of them, but they're too big to scan. So I'm getting all these mailers in my mailbox, and I read them. And I go online, I look at the two candidates and what they have to say, and I look at them from two perspectives. One is just based on my values and how I voted in the past as an unaffiliated voter. I'm not a member of the Democratic or Republican Party. I know who I'm going to vote for already, and that's the incumbent. But I want to know what she has to say and what her challenger has to say. And I want to just, in other words, I don't take anything for granted. And I think if I had the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with both of these people, both of whom are family people, the incumbent, I'm going to mention their names in just a second, but the incumbent has 4 kids, the challenger has 2 kids. They both have, loving spouses, it seems, who support them. They're both good people. The incumbent was a teacher, a high school teacher, and she actually became the Connecticut and then the National Teacher of the Year in 2016. She never, politics is new to her. She ran because of what Trump had to say when he became president. And she cares about kids and their futures. And the challenger is a guy who's an engineer. He worked in the corporate world as an engineer. So they both seem like decent people, but what the challenger is saying and putting out in these kinds of things, calling the incumbent a radical extremist who doesn't represent our values, that's just misinformation. I mean, she's not a she's not a she's a moderate Democrat basically, but more progressive than he seems to be. So anyway, I want to get into the nuts and bolts of who funds all of these things that end up in my mailbox. None of these are actually funded by anybody in Connecticut. So I live in Connecticut, 5th congressional district, and I have 6 flyers there. Two of them are funded by the AFP Action, which is the political action arm of Americans for Prosperity, which is a conservative organization funded and founded by the Koch brothers, whose father and they inherited it, made their money in the energy industries for half a century now, probably including this father. And they've been funding conservative causes, especially, but not only, anti-climate change activism, because arguing about the climate is bad for the energy industry. So they funded Americans for Prosperity funded two of these George Logan um, flyers that I received, and the other four were funded by, I have to read this because it's long, the New York Republican Federal Campaign Committee, which is it locates in Albany, New York. And it's actually a national organization that receives donations from around the country. So it's a nationwide effort from the Republican Party to get George Logan elected in Connecticut. None of these came from George Logan's campaign itself, or from his local office or anything in Connecticut. So I'm just gonna that's the basic grounding. We can get into some of the language, the misinformation, the partial truths, and the outright lies that appear on these things, which which leads me to question. I feel bad for George Logan because he seems like a good guy, and my question is, does he really believe all of the things that appear under his name? If he does, that's problematic because some of them are lies. If he doesn't, why is he allowing himself, as an adult, educated male with a family, and he's had success in his professional life? Why does he allow these national groups to use his name to tell lies? So both of those are problematic for me. And again, I actually wrote my newsletter this week deals with this particular issue, and I'm really clear that for me, it's not about the two candidates. I mean, I'm going to vote for one, not the other, but it's about the underlying processes, systems, and strategies that political parties use. In this case, it happens to be the Republican Party I'm talking about, but both parties do this, just so we're clear. Just that the incumbent, the person I want to vote for, I'm worried because I haven't received anything from her. I don't know, I mean, and in truth, I receive a weekly newsletter from her where she documents what's happened in the last week, what she's doing in Congress, what she's doing locally, because she has the office here in Connecticut, right in Waterbury, which is 15 minutes south of me, and her office in DC. So she keeps me apprised, and I like what she's doing. She doesn't publish. She's not tweeting. She has a Facebook page and YouTube channel, but there's not a lot on them. There are some things, but she's not one of these Congress people who goes and does something and then tweets about it and shows herself, which is what some people in Congress do. She's gone to work for the people in the 5th congressional district, so I like her for that reason. So I'm going to shut up there and then see what you have to say, and then we can take it whatever direction you want to go in.
Well, again, thank you for choosing a great topic. It is timely because just this week, again, I have to give my applause to YouTube, because YouTube definitely does a good job. They don't do the best job. Nothing's perfect, but they do a great job of recommending videos I probably wouldn't have watched or known to search for had they not suggested it for a period of my timeline. And just based off what I watched, they give me good suggestions for the most part. And one suggestion this week, in alignment with your saying, and I know I'm going to pronounce his name wrong because I'm just now getting exposed to him, but I'm going to buy his book, and I've seen him on 2 interviews. His name is Yoval Harari.
Right.
I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. And he has a book called Nexus, and he talks about information. And one of the things he talks about is that we've shifted into a society that everything's not about truth anymore. It's about getting as much information out there is possible. And then you're talking about how both sides, Democrats and Republicans, are both guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I want to get as much information out there, and and the belief is that the truth will rise to the top, where it doesn't. The truth does not rise to the top of all the information; it gets lost in there. And the conspiracy theories are easier to create when you have so much information. And he also talks about how AI now is a key component. So now you have humans now, so you have an objective. The AI doesn't put feelings into the objective, empathy into the objective. The AI just one objective. I'm going to get this gentleman elected. And I think a lot of those campaign things are coming from AI generated uh, material that's created from snatching from the internet. What's the best suggestions to come up with in order to get this person elected? Not the ones with the most integrity, empathy, feelings. None of that goes into the scenarios whatsoever, or the analysis that the AI does. So I think that's what we're seeing so much of. And even if it wasn't AI, it's someone human who, again, is offering that candidate. You say you kind of feel sorry for him. My thing is, he might not necessarily see everything or approve everything himself, but he understands that he signed the deal. To me, anybody at this stage politically who still believes that you're going to be a Republican candidate because of your conservative values, and then you're going to go into Congress, particularly if it's Congress, and you're going to go do something in your community that's going to help, you know, advocate or put a platform together around conservative values. You're joking. Either you, either you're ignorant to what's really going on with the Republican Party, or are you complicit? It's either one of them. And if you are ignorant, that really shows a lot about your awareness. So we got to question that, because they clearly define who they are and what they're gonna. We're not gonna have integrity. We throw that out the window.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do whatever it takes to win. I've heard that expression so much when they say, I don't know where it came from originally, the quote, and I don't like it, but it's been used a lot. People say, if you're not cheating, you're not winning. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I forgot they equate that to either Pat Riley or somebody. I don't know if Pat Riley actually said it him, but my point is that's the attitude they operate from. They operate from that kind of perspective, and it shows. And that's a culture we create, and it's created that culture so much now that if you take any kind of YouTube classes on social media marketing, how to get your message out there, Instagram or whatever it is, they all teach you how to go about and just get information out. Just come up with a sensational headline, and now even go to AI for it. So you don't even have to think about it. You just go to AI, tell AI some demographics. Here's a concept of what message I want to get across, and then AI is going to present some information to you, and then you can tweak it back and forth until you get exactly what you want. But the point of the matter is, that's who is now driving our information highway, and that's what's so dangerous. It's because we don't even understand that most of that stuff is not coming from humans. It's coming from a computer that has no emotions, no emotional intelligence whatsoever, and doesn't think about the consequences or even care about the consequences of the material that's been created. Just get information out there to achieve its objective, and that's all that matters. So that's kind of my initial uh, comments to what you laid out.
Yeah, so you actually touched on a few things that are relevant to some of these, directly relevant to some of these flyers. So I'm just going to mention a couple of specific examples. I have many. I mean, we could spend the next 4 hours, which we're not obviously going to do, just speaking about the examples of the problem in these 6 flyers that I've received so far. And it's also very interesting is when they're funded by this New York Republican Federal Campaign Committee, or when it's funded by the Americans for Prosperity, it basically says, we're not affiliated with any individual candidate. So they're putting it out for George Logan, but their disclaimer says, we don't represent any particular candidate, which is kind of an interesting thing to say when you put his name on the thing and you're attacking the other candidate. So, but two examples. In this one, George Logan was a Connecticut state senator for 2 terms. So, in the state, He became a state senator in 2016, was reelected in 2018, lost in 2020, and then he challenged Johanna Hayes in 2022 and lost in a very close race. It's going to be a close race again this time around. But one of the things that they used against her was they accused her, because of how she voted post the murder of George Floyd, they accused her of supporting the defund the police movement, which very few people in the country actually supported. There are some, but very few people. And the best part about that is, and I have to laugh at this, so Johanna Hayes is married to a man that they knew each other growing up in Waterbury, Connecticut. That's where they grew up. That's where they live. That's where her office is. That's where she was teacher of the year. And so they, I think they were 13 and 15 years old when they met, something like that. And he's a 27 plus year law enforcement veteran. He's a police detective in the city of Waterbury. And when they began accusing her of wanting to defund the police, like, he came out and did a public statement, which is online, you can see it. And to his credit, if I were him, I would have taken no prisoners. He was really respectful and just honoring his wife and just basically saying, look, in this family, we're not interested in defunding the police because that would lose half of our salary. We don't want to defund my job. But she's been married to a police officer, a detective. So that's one. And they keep hammering, she wants to defund the police. Simply not true. All right. They refer to her as, I'm not going to go look for the exact quote. Oh, no, here it is. She wants to allow illegal immigrants to vote in our elections. There's absolutely no evidence that anybody in Congress, Republican or Democrat, wants to allow illegal immigrants to vote in our elections. Right? So I could go on. I want to shift slightly. So George Logan identifies as a different kind of Republican, because he knows that association with the Republican Party nowadays can be a political liability. So he says you can't put him in the box of the typical Republican, because what he'll do is kick that box away. All right. And I feel bad for him, whether that was photoshopped or he actually stood in the box and they took a picture of him. I'm guessing it was photoshopped, since this one was funded by the New York Republican Federal Campaign Committee. But he's got a voting record that he's pro-choice, is 100% in favor of women's rights to choose. So he's not a typical Republican, but most Republicans are pro-choice. That's the thing that gets lost in the conversation. So it's just this effort to try to get a Republican into that seat by saying bad things about the Democratic incumbent and trying to identify this chosen man, chosen by the Republican Party to run, and saying he's not a typical Republican. He identifies himself to differentiate himself from his opponent. He calls himself a political outsider. I'm not going to keep showing the flyer. You trust that I'm telling the truth. Quote, he's a political outsider. But he was in office in the state of Connecticut before, Johanna Hayes was still teaching. Right? She's been in Congress for 6 years. He was in the state Senate in Connecticut for 4 years. Both of them are political outsiders. He was an engineer. She was a teacher. So that doesn't differentiate them. He says he's a true family man. He cares about families. Johanna Hayes has 4 kids and a husband, and she works really hard, especially for the youth of America. She's a true family woman, but we don't say that phrase in this country. He's a family man, because women, by definition, are family people because they raise the kids and do all the grunt work at home. He's a common sense leader. Well, because Shahana Hayes obviously has no common sense, but if you look at her voting record and you look at her articulation of why she takes stands, she obviously does have common sense. And he's going to, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I'll stop. I just want to find the particular one where he talks about what he's going to do. So George Logan, this is a quote, George Logan will lower inflation. So for 50 years of Democratic and Republican Congresses and presidential administrations, inflation comes and goes as a problem. But George Logan is going to lower it by himself. He will secure the border. And so no presidential administration or Congress has secured the border in my lifetime. And when Joe Biden got a bipartisan bill on the table in May of this year, Donald Trump convinced the Republicans in Congress, Senate, and the House to vote no against it because he wanted to run on immigration and the border. So the Republican Party killed the bill, even though there were Republicans and Democrats who agreed on it, and the U.S. Border Patrol supported it. They liked what was in the bill. But George Logan is going to single-handedly secure the border, and finally, he's going to keep our communities safe. All right? Nowhere does he explain how he's going to do these things when neither Republicans nor Democrats have been able to do them so far. So it's like where I get really frustrated, and because I spent 6 years putting this book together, is I'm fine to disagree on policy or issue solutions with an individual who has something to say. But all of these things are just filled with nonsense. And my guess is that George Logan is not a nonsensical guy. If you met him in person, I bet he's a nice guy, from what I've read about him and seen about him. But he's put himself in a position to be at the effect of Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers billions, and this New York State organization that takes money from conservative donors from around the country. So it's a real specific, limited example of what's going on in every voting district across this country. So I don't mean to pick on Mr. Logan, but he's the one that I'm getting mail from. And it's just such a problem. And as you said, I will say this last thing, the idea that if you get all this information out there and the truth will rise to the top. I mean, that's the cousin of Reagan's trickle-down economics, where if you let all the wealthiest people make as much money as possible, the wealth will trickle down. I mean, George Herbert Walker Bush, in a debate against Reagan, basically said that's voodoo economics. Even another Republican said that doesn't work in real life. So it's the same idea. What's really happening is, as Steve Bannon said in 2016, before Trump was elected, he said the Democrats aren't the enemy. The real enemy is the media. And what we need to do, meaning the conservative far-right folks, Breitbart News and the rest of Steve Bannon's pals, and this is a quote, "We need to flood the zone with shit," is exactly what he said. And they've been immensely successful at it. That's all of the information that you were referring to, but it's not, truth doesn't rise to the top. Right? Because truth is actually pretty heavy.
Exactly.
There's a lot to it, so it sinks to the bottom. And all the fluff shit, if you'll excuse my clinical language, is what rises to the top. And small-minded people who are in a hurry to try to understand things and won't do the work grab the easiest thing to grab and say, "Oh, this is true." So, yeah, we're in a mess of a situation here.
Yeah, we are. And we're in a world where truly the loudest, they say the squeakiest wheel gets the attention. Just get a megaphone and be willing to not have principles. And you're going to be heard nowadays, especially if you're willing to be, I hate to say it, more so, I hate to say it, but saying I want to make sure people don't think I'm biased when I make this statement, but it's just facts, not my allegiance to any particular party. So I'm not Democrat in the context that I support the party's ideology. Just it's a party that's not as crazy as the Republican Party, at least from the candidates they choose, policy wise and the way they manage things. Well, either way, if you're the working class man, you're not going to win with either party you got in the wheel. You're just going to lose more with the Republican.
Mhm.
But what's funny when you talk about all these things that guy George, what his name is,
Logan, George Logan. Yeah.
saying about him being a out of the box Republican thinker. He's gonna kick the box down the street. See, all those are just platitudes because everybody knows, and this is what I'm saying. When you really, strip away all the noise and just look at what's there, no Republican is ever going to go against what they do when they get into Congress. They vote as a block every single time. It's not they're not voting their constituents' best interest. They vote in the party's best interest. You just spoke of that with the border bill. There was a border bill that if they really cared about all the things they said, out of the box thinkers and all these things he's trying to qualities and attributes he's trying to attribute to himself, he's not going to live up to that in Congress. He's going to sell his soul with many signs because whatever the party says, no, this is what we're voting for, regardless of anything else that you say that you want to do when you got in the office. No, you're doing this, and you're going to do it 100%, or you're not going to be in the party. Because Big has taken over the Republican Party, and so they might as well just come out and just be honest and say that you know we're going to do what we can to win. And J.D. Vance pretty much said it. He said in an interview, he basically said, listen, if I got to make up stories in order to get the news media to pay attention to something, then I'll make up stories. You know, he tried to coax it, and try to, you know, define it by giving the truth more information. So he's trying to muddy that truth statement with more words by let me throw more words when I try to explain it. But no, you said it clearly and concisely that if you have to make up a story, you will. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. As long as it gets eyeballs, as long as it gets attention. And I don't know why the Democrat just from a strategy that should be in a campaign ad. That should just be constantly his faces making that soundbite saying, showing one story and then him saying it, and show another story and him saying it. Just really tie that message into this is who you choosing between us, who or at least saying we're of integrity. Yeah, we might be corporate. We're going to be in the best interest of corporate America, not the people. So you're not getting that party, even though we say that we are. But at least we won't come and take away your freedoms. We're not going to bring negative energy. We're not going to bring the racist rhetoric at our top of our leadership circles. See, that's you're getting that with the Republican Party. They can say what they want. They can have as many black colored faces in their party as much as they want. But your leadership circle, the ones who's sitting there at the heads of the table, obviously want racists around.
Hmm.
So if they're going to have racists in their network, then they're going to have racist influence in their policy making. And that to me, again, is another clear indication that even if I was leaning towards some of the conservative values and policies, those things right there would just snap me right back into reality that I can't just blindly throw, okay, because you're going to make the economy better. You have a better economy, but it's going to just be more racist. So I'm going to choose economy over a much more just and fair society. It's like I really would want to question those black Republicans who still believe that they can actually make a difference. It's like you're not going to go to Congress and make a difference. You're not going to turn this party around. So what is your real goal? Because you're going to not speak out against Trump because you did. You get alienated quickly, and you just have that little quick election cycle that you made your statements, and you're going to be out, and you won't even be heard from anymore. So that's what my thing is. Where's integrity? Where's when you study history, the media always gave you the impressions that whether you like that particular president or not, their president was someone who had great quotes. They were strong. They represent the country well. These whether you like them politically or not, they always appeared. They always gave the personification of greatness, of great men who managed to win the election, become the president of the United States, most powerful man in the world. And this is a quote by him. Like I remember playing this video game. They had zombies. They had broken into the Pentagon, and they were just constantly at different times, intervals of the game, they would throw these quotes out from these great Pentagon leaders during that time frame, the 60s. And Kennedy was the president. And he had this quote about, and I never forget it because it's really a nice, strong, profound quote. He said, let's not pray for better times. Let's pray to be stronger men.
Hmm.
You know, and that's really a profound, powerful quote, right?
Hmm.
You know, when you think about that. And that's, my point is, that's how, to me, the president was associated with those kind of powerful words, powerful quotes, iconic image, pride. Now the Republicans say we got to strip all that away. As long as we win, that's all that matters. As long as we can control power, we can control the thinking through the media. And that's what they do with the flyers. That's what they do with the constant propaganda, with the news cycles that we constantly hear. And that's also the downside of, we see that 6 or 7 powerful corporations own all the media, own 99% of the media. So they're in cahoots to give out a unified message when it's necessary. Finally, I just wrap up by saying that's why it's essential. It's not just a good suggestion, it's not just a good idea. To me, it's mandatory that you have to navigate what you feed your mind. Because if you allow yourself to just be still in passive mode, which is, I'm going to turn the TV on and just let, flip through some channels and just let the content provider give me content for what they want, or I'm going to let my phone through notifications dictate what I click on and what I find to be of interest. If that's what I call passive engagement with media, if that's what that is, then you're going to be controlled, influenced, and you're going to be going against your own best interests.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I really appreciate what you said about, you said there was a lot going on there, but the reasoning of, if a black person goes to Congress thinking they're going to change the Republican Party, specifically about the Republican Party, what are they really going there for? And something we haven't circled back around to, but we've spoken about a lot in the last 2 years, is that shorthand for adult development, which really comes into play, not just in what you said about, what is that person really trying to accomplish by getting to Congress as a black person in the Republican Party. But just really quickly again, the shorthand for development for adults is me. It's all about me. I do things just for myself. It's about my group is the next one. Second one is it's about my group or my groups. Third one is about all human beings, which is extraordinarily rare on the planet, much less in this country. And then the last one, which is almost non-existence in human beings, is I really relate as part of the universe, the cosmos, creation, call it what you want, spirit. And what we see, obviously, in the party rhetoric and Democrats versus Republicans is that us-centric, that group centrism. We do it for the party. So when Donald Trump, who's me-centric, it's all about him. He doesn't really care about the Republican Party. He never has. In fact, he's been a Democrat in his past, and has supported and he gave money to Kamala Harris when she was running for re-election as I forget if when she was a senator or if she was running for re-election as the Attorney General of California. But he and his wife gave money to her election campaign like in 2014. So, he has no consistency. But when it came for the border bill, what we spoke about earlier, Trump realized he wanted, if the border were better, he would lose that as a campaign issue. So he made it clear to Republican senators and to Mike Johnson in the House, don't approve that. So they didn't. So a me-centric guy, a guy that only cares about himself, convinced the party that he hijacked to hurt the country. So, in other words, this is bad for me. So, you guys have to stop it from happening. Unite the Republican Party and do what's bad for the country. That's exactly, I mean, that's maybe oversimplified a bit, but that's exactly what happened. And so the developmental worldview thing is just so important. What is it that, and again, I hate to pick on my friend George Logan, what is it that he thinks he's going to accomplish in this Republican Party in Congress? He'd be more welcome in some other district running as a Democrat. Yeah, he really would, I think. I'd have to think that all the way through, but Connecticut is a blue state, but it has red counties and towns for sure. I mean, where I'm sitting right now typically votes red. The town I'm sitting in the county is close, but it's one of the red areas in a blue state. And he could win this election because, he has a lot of this big money behind him and he's out there really trying. And Jahana Hayes is basically, for good or ill, she's doing her work as a congresswoman. She's representing the people of the 5th district and isn't as caught up in campaign. I hate the idea that our elected officials, especially the representatives, because they only, 2-year terms, they constantly have to be raising money and campaigning. But that's one of the reasons I really respect her, because she does more legislating and representing than she does campaigning. I'm pretty sure, based on my experience in the past election cycles, in the last 4 weeks before the election, I will get some direct mail from her campaign. But I haven't received anything yet. I hope she's not taking me for granted. But yeah, so it's just the solution is, I mean, I don't know the solution, but the solution I give when I teach, and people say, well, what can we really do about all of this? Not just this issue with campaign flyers and things, but just about the direction of the country. And the best answer I know is you decide what kind of human being you want to be, how you feel about other human beings. Let's just keep it easy. Other American citizens, people who live in the same country as you. It's harder to go out there to the other 8 billion people. Let's just keep it small. And when you get up in the morning, be the kind of person you want to be, such that you treat others kindly and welcoming others in this country. And you don't create an us against them mentality in your own country or your own town or your own state. In other words, wake up every morning and be the best human being you can be. And if the best human being you can be includes lying about other people, saying things you know are not true, or that you didn't bother finding out before you repeated them, you just took them, you didn't do your due diligence. If that's the best human being you can be, then you're part of the problem. And I have no, and I don't call people, I don't use names, I don't use generalizations. I try really hard not to. I tend not to label things. I try to say, here's what that person just did. Look at it. There it is. Here's what that person just said. That's not true. Here's the proof it's not true. I don't have to say, a horse's backside, or you're, a radical extremist, as George Logan's supporters called Jahana Hayes. Why call names? Point to the things she's actually done. She didn't support defunding the police. That's a lie. Right? She spoke about reappropriating funds in order to better hire and train the police. Whole different conversation. So anyway, I'm repeating myself, so I'll stop there and let you repeat yourself.
From a strategy standpoint, when I'm thinking about when you just mentioned that last part, that's what kind of took my thoughts. And I'm just thinking about the Democratic strategy. And it reminds me of Star Wars, where if you watch Star Wars from the very beginning, the Emperor is masquerading as the leader of the Senate, the president of the Senate for the Democrats. They don't somehow they don't see it
Mm.
coming for the Republican Party. I mean, for the rebels. And at that time, it was the Senate, and then he eventually ended up becoming the emperor. For the empire, he came out and got exposed. But a lot of times, what their leadership think it's like someone else controlling them because they don't act in their best interest. Like using terms like defund the police. It's like somebody said, "Wow, the idea of reappropriating funds would be a great idea right now, but we gotta take over that momentum. We gotta change that. We can't let that momentum and energy build. How about we call it defund the police and get everybody rally around that, so that way the people who want change are still being appeased, but it's never going to pass because no one's really going to latch around a defund the police model
Mm.
because it's basically saying in that case when you saying defund the police, you basically are saying to pretty much abolish the police. That's simultaneously what you're saying at the same time. And of course, people were saying, well, that's not what we meant, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Anything you defund, basically, you're saying you're eventually going to abolish or get rid of, eventually. And so it's just those little subtle things that come out the Democrats go with and let, pretty much take over their whole movement and then just kill it. So that's the first comment I just made. So it reminds me of that Star Wars contract George Lucas wrote in that. But the other thing I just want to talk about is, again, going back to Republicans, that guy, George Logan. See, for me, this is where I talk about now more than ever, and it's clear. Maybe we used to have more of it back then, but now it's even more blatant. The blacks are not monolithic, but we always get grouped as a voting block like we're monolithic. Well, the black vote, like it's always going to be this, and the blacks always do this together, and it's like,
Right.
no, we got George Logan. George Logan's not putting his identity is not his race. His identity is himself. I want to make as much money as I want for me, and whatever I got to do to position myself to get there, I'm willing to do that. That's where, to me, if you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna sign up to be a black Republican, because when you say you're gonna run for office, to me, and you're saying I'm gonna be a civil servant, I'm serving the people is what you're agreeing to do. That's what you're paying salary for. Your job is to serve the people. And again, the mega Republicans, I'm not talking about conservatives in general, I'm talking about specifically the mega Republicans that have taken over Congress, taken the Republican Party, they don't care about serving the people anymore. It's about serving their own Donald Trump's interests and the wealthy. And that's all that they care about. They don't care about serving the people. So if you say I'm a Republican nowadays, you're signing up to that agreement. So to me, you got to be held accountable to that as well. You can't be giving any pass. You can't be, well, I didn't know any better, or I naively believe that I'm so conservative in my values. I want to change. Even Dick Cheney gave up. So you see when Dick Cheney gives up and says he's not, that he can, the power he is at, if he don't think he can change the Republican Party, who the hell you are to think you can come in and change it? So he said, I have to vote outside of my political ideology and beliefs because MAGA is so insane, so crazy. I can't support that as a Republican. I myself, lifelong Republican, I'm saying this is from Dick Cheney's perspective, vice president, and who reaped all the benefits of the Republican Party, can't support it anymore. But you, who have reaped no benefits of the Republican Party, believes that you naively can come make a difference. So that's what makes me believe you don't believe that.
Hmm.
You can't be that naive. So in other words, you must be that evil. I got to put you in the evil category. So now you don't get the benefit of the doubt of being ignorant. You are totally complicit with the fact that you want to bring forth the, again, racist values. I mean, that woman that Trump is now being tied to, Loomer, Lindsay Loomer.
Loomis, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the comments she made clearly as racist as she can be. And I have no problem with giving her the platform to say it, because to me, that's what you need to know to who you. So this is what I'm saying about how I. One on the other hand, I kind of like how things are shifting, because now you see where people really are. See, if someone says, and I just have to be honest, if I meet someone on LinkedIn or just in business, and they are a mega Republican, I don't see anything where we're going to be able to grow and build beyond that initial session. You got your hat on, you saying, I'm down with Trump regardless. He can be a criminal. He can have all these, he can make all these inflammatory statements because he's not talking about me.
Hmm.
And so I think one of the biggest mistakes that I think a lot of blacks who consider themselves conservative in mind and want to vote Republican and align themselves with the white guy who hates is that they believe when a white guy says, I only want to deploy or I only wanted to export all the immigrants, that their bigotry and racism stops the immigrants. They actually believe that. Like that, like you're not next once they achieve that goal. You're next. It's like, why can't you see that? It doesn't stop there just because they're immigrants. They're using you. If you sit here and believe that the immigrant population is bad, they're using you and they're having you help them achieve their goal. And you are so ignorant and you are so adamant in trying to only make improvements in your own life that you're going to miss out. So I know I went off on a tangent a little bit. I just wanted to kind of wrap things back up by saying this is why, to what you laid out as far as becoming fully human, it has to be followed. It has to be a process. It has to be steps that you're doing on a daily basis, because you can't just survive. It's kind of like a universal law. Either you are working out every day and eating properly, or you are not, and you're losing muscle mass, you're getting out of shape, you're losing energy. There's no middle. You're not just sustaining. There's no universal way. You're either getting worse in life or getting better in life, but you're not sustaining. And that's how we are right now with information. You're not consciously choosing what information you're feeding your mind and having critical thoughts based on analysis of your own, then you've been led by someone else. Again, it won't be in your best interest.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, so are we close enough to the top of the hour here? I should give my suggestion for moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a perfect segment. Segue
yeah.
into that.
Yeah, so I mean, I touched on part of it already. Um, just getting really clear on, what is my worldview? Am I just concerned for myself? Am I just concerned? Am I just concerned for my group? And that can be healthy or unhealthy. I could be, oh, our group and their group. We have some differences, but we can exchange things and learn from each other. That's healthy. But if it's our group against their group, that's virtually all of the horrific things human beings have done at scale throughout history is from an unhealthy group-centric view. Whether it was religions against each other, nations against each other, political parties against each other, you name it, ideologies against each other. That's where it comes from. And then the ideal thing is if you can relate to all human beings, that's graduate school. It's harder to get there, but it's definitely doable. So consider how you view the world. I consider how I view the world. Is it just about me and my groups, about all human beings? That's one. And more specifically for what we talked about today, is when you receive political stuff, if you get hard copy mailers, if you get it through your social media feeds, if you get it in television advertising, however you get your political stuff coming at you, take the time to consider the claims made, whether it's from the person you think you're going to support or from the opponent. And if you're undecided, obviously from both. And really interrogate each bullet point. Is it true? How can I know it's true? Let me go and look and find out, do some research. If you're not willing to do that, and then somebody gets into office who you disagree with, you got what you deserved. You have responsibility to do your best, because the truth will not rise to the top. You have to do some work to get to as close to the truth in a given situation as you can. And sometimes there's not a truth. There are two honorable opinions who disagree, and that's fine. That's a real thing in the world. But they don't call each other names and make up lies. They just have a valid disagreement on an important issue. So do the work necessary to understand who's telling you the truth, who's not, who's giving you misinformation, who's giving you part of the truth, but withholding the part they don't want you to see. That's a lot of work, and it really needs to be done. So there.
Well, thank you for that wonderful advice and suggestions. And, it's definitely something, like you said, we should all follow suit to. I know I definitely will. So I appreciate that. Let's move into our last section of our show, which is lifting up someone, recognizing someone who we feel has either lived currently or has lived the fully human characteristics. And so, with that being said, I go first. Have someone in mind that's, I'm going to say Booker T. Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about Booker T. Washington is that there's two schools of thought within the Black community about Booker T. Washington. Some say he didn't have the best interest of Black people in mind because he was advocating that Blacks should get laborious jobs, learning skill, learning labor, and white people will grow to like us down the road as a result of being able to bring value to society. And a lot of folks felt that was kind of selling out. We should be more demanding that, not worrying about getting our education like the W.E.B. Du Bois's. They can get an education will be the way out of our slavery and out of our second class citizenship. So he's not really regarded in a lot of our circles I know of as a great man. And I want to dispel that because I believe that he was. Several reasons. And number one is because of the fact is I think that strategy makes sense. If you actually learn a skill, then you'll never be broke. I've seen a lot of unemployed lawyers who can't do anything but go to LinkedIn every day and pull out their resume. But if you actually have the skill of auto repairman, you can go out and make money, your family, and before the end of the day, you can bring home some food. You don't worry about trying to get a job. You can go out here, use your skill as a laborer and get paid anyway, just off the talent. So that was a value. And then the things he did remarkable was how he built a college. Again, coming from being a slave. I mean, who does that? Folks who can actually now go to school and get their PhD couldn't just build a college and still have it sustain itself, hundreds or so years later. And then on top of that, when they were building the college physically, because the city was racist and didn't want to allow them to have bricks and didn't sell them bricks, they made bricks. It didn't allow any excuses to come up in the way of why we're not going to build this college. This is the objective for the people. This was going to improve the plight of my people. And just like coming out of slavery and achieving the heights he achieved, he influenced and led and created a lot of great leaders that came as a result of him. First Veteran Administration, Office of Veteran Administration was created from a student of his, as well as First Black Bank. So just a lot of great things he did. I just want to say that to me is being fully human and living those characteristics. So I want to give it a Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, beautiful. And actually, I wasn't sure where I was going to go when you were mentioning Booker T. Washington. For some reason, brought this person's name up into my consciousness. So I'm gonna go with somebody I wrote about briefly in the book, but Sojourner Truth, whose name before she chose that for herself was Isabella Baumfree, and she was born into slavery. She was actually had her freedom bought by I think a family in New York State. So she ended up being free, and then at some point she realized she had a lot to say, so she called herself Sojourner Truth, and she started to sojourn. She started to journey and start telling the truth. And the reason I want to really honor her is because she lived in the 1800s. I think she was born in the 1820s, and I'm just doing this from memory. Died in the 1880s. So she lived during the Civil War. She got to witness the end of enslavement, the beginning of Jim Crow, and the lynchings and all that. So she was aware of all that. And she was speaking out both on behalf of freed slaves, for the end of slavery, and for the empowerment of women. So she had this, we don't know what it was like to live in the 19th century. Those of us who are in the 20th and 21st centuries. So what it was like to be alive then, first of all, that's one. What was it like to be a woman then, second class citizen? And what was it like to be a Black woman who had been enslaved then? So she was dealing with some stuff that, I have no, basis for comparison in my own life. But she was so firm in her convictions. And I'm not going to be able to quote this, but I can paraphrase it. At one point, when it was becoming clear that formerly enslaved Black men were going to get the right to vote, that was the 15th Amendment, and that no woman, white or Black or rainbow colored, was going to get the right to vote. She basically said at this big gathering, I think it was in New York, and she said, if Black men get the right to vote and Black women don't, all women don't, it's going to be just like it was before, where there'll be this class of people up here and the women will be back down here. It's just enslavement all over again, because Black men will hold power over Black women. And so she made a lot of people uncomfortable, and think about that with social media and all of the crazy people around today that have platforms. What she said wasn't particularly extreme. It was, it was spot on true, but she had the wisdom, the insight, and the courage to say that to a bunch of women, men, Black and white, not all of whom agreed with her. And she didn't get to, she died probably in the area of 40 years before women got the right to vote in 1920. Again, I'm making that number up, but God bless her, because she was just running on some cylinders that a lot of people didn't have back then, and a lot of people don't have today as well.
Exactly. So a lot of people don't have those today as well.
Yeah. So, Sojourner Truth, the woman formerly known as Isabella Baumfree.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice. Well, as we wrap up our show, again, I've enjoyed it. I want to thank you again for choosing the topic, being present, and again for writing a great book to help us kind of frame the context of what we're talking about and these healing America's narratives to become more fully human. I thank our listening audience again for listening to another episode of the Fully Human Connections podcast. Until next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Hope everybody continue their journey. Let's all seek to follow Reggie's suggestions and all become more fully human. Thank you.